Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Courtroom Insider, special edition tonight. Normally not here on a Tuesday unless we have a big trial or some big crime happening, but I just completed an interview and I didn't want to hold it any longer. In fact, this month I'm going to try to do several special episodes of Courtroom Insider focused on different cases that you may not have heard about or some that you may have heard about that we are going to revisit with different lenses, with different eyes. By the way, my name's Nate Eaton, and I'm so glad you're here. Please let me know where you're watching from. If you have any questions, put them in the comments below. Also, this is the email, questions@eastidahonews.com. As you're watching tonight, if you have any questions, please email this address, and that way we'll be sure to get to them for our next edition of Courtroom Insider, because I have a feeling as you watch this interview, you're going to have questions. So that's the email to use. I want to let you know that tomorrow night we will be talking about the case of Shasta Groene. You remember her? If you don't, it's a case that paralyzed the country back in 2005. A new book has come out about that case, and I will have the author here with me. And then on Thursday night, we will be talking with Brad Bradley. He's the brother of Amy Bradley, the same Amy Bradley that is in the #1 Netflix movie called Where is Amy Bradley? Oh, no, I'm sorry. Amy Bradley is Missing, I believe. Let me check. I can't believe I forgot the name. I watched the series. It's about a woman named Amy who goes on a cruise and vanishes. She's from the Richmond, Virginia area where I used to work, where I used to live. Amy Bradley is Missing. That's what it's called. And it has taken off. And we will have her brother here to talk about the case, any new leads, what Netflix got wrong or left out. It's going to be a fascinating interview. So that we have a jam-packed week of Courtroom Insider, and I'm already working on stuff for next week. So I hope you can tune in, not just tonight, but tomorrow and also on Thursday. But for tonight, Portia Louder. This is a woman, to be honest with you, I had not heard about until last week. She served time in prison, was sentenced to 7 years in federal prison for mortgage fraud. This is an LDS mother in Utah, living her life as a photographer, several kids, husband, beautiful home, life was great. And then it all comes crashing down for crimes that she didn't really know she was committing, or at least she figured something wasn't quite right, but wasn't sure just how serious they are. I don't want to say much more because she really dove into it during her interview with me. So we're going to get straight to my interview with Portia Louder. Again, if you have questions, please email them, questions@eastidahonews.com, because Portia is willing to come back next week or the week after sometime soon and answer your questions. So here is my interview with Portia Louder. Well, I want to thank you for being here. And first, let's just go back to, I don't want to say the beginning, but I've been reading up on your story before you were convicted and went to prison. You
Yeah.
talk about in your book that you had a rough few teenage years. How would you describe that?
Yeah, I would describe it as rough. You did a
Right.
good job of describing. No, um, chaotic, and aggressive. I think that my younger years were pretty dysfunctional. I started into relationships way too young, got pregnant way too young, and had children. It took me a while to get on solid ground. It was when I was about 27, after having been a single mother, struggling with addiction and placing a child for adoption, I met my husband and we got married. And so that was kind of the beginning of me trying to build something that was more functional. And one of the assets I have is I'm a hard worker. So, and my parents were hard workers. I'm the oldest of 7 kids. I watched my parents just really grind to kind of take care of the family. And both of them were business owners and both of them were involved in real estate transactions, not the way that I ended up becoming so, but we always bought homes and sold them every few years. And so they would make money that way. So I had been around that entrepreneurial spirit. And when I was 27 and I married my husband, I started a photography company. And that business really grew because I just worked at it. And a lot of my family locally here in Utah were photographers as well. So I had worked for them and watched kind of how they built their companies. And so I started this photography business and it grew really fast. I went from, I think my first year I did about 8 weddings, and within 2 years I was doing 200 weddings a year. Like
Oh, wow.
really, yeah. I had employees and was busy night and day. And then my husband and I also had our first child together. So, and then we had another one really fast. And so I had children in elementary school that I was, working at. I mean, it took me a while to kind of get them on solid ground and started this business. And then I had another baby and knew that I needed to build a home to accommodate the studio that was growing fast. And then I ended up having a back surgery and with my addiction. So I really struggle. I can't use any kind of narcotics. I've learned that about myself.
Mm.
But
Did you get involved in drugs as a teenager?
so I would, I used some alcohol as a teenager, not so much drugs. When about 23, as a single mother, I had two children and I got pregnant. After I placed my son for adoption, that's when I really started struggling with addiction. At first, it was prescription drugs, and then I went to street drugs. And I had been a photographer for family. I ended up losing my job and kind of losing everything after that. And um, a series of events happened, and I hit a bottom, and I ended up getting into recovery. And it was hard, it wasn't easy. And I think that those events kind of led to me meeting my husband, the sobriety that I found. He was in a lot better place than I was. He took a
Right.
chance with me and we got married, and he adopted the two children that I had. And then I had this son that I placed for adoption that I didn't have contact with at that point. And that's when we kind of started to build this life. And so,
I see. So you gave up the one son for adoption. You had two more. You met your husband when you're 27. You guys had another two together.
nope.
No.
I'll explain.
Oh,
So I got pregnant when I was 17 and had a child. By the time I was 21, I had two children and I was a single mother. And then when I was 23, I got pregnant again and I
okay.
placed that child for adoption. And then after I
Oh,
had him, I really struggled. Like they didn't talk about counseling or trauma or any of that back then. And so I just thought I'd go back to work and I'd be okay. And I just wasn't. Like I'd been through too much and I couldn't process it all. And so
okay.
at
So
first
when
I
you,
had, go
oh,
ahead.
go ahead.
Well, it went, I started using drugs as a coping skill and then it just got worse and worse and worse. But anyway,
Right.
and I met my husband when I was about a few months sober and then, yeah, we started dating. So
And you get married, you're 27, and that's when you decided you needed to have a studio inside your house. And then you said you had a surgery at that point.
So we got married and bought a little home and we put a studio in that home. And it took about 4 years as that business was growing and we had two more children. And then I decided I needed to build a house. So we kind of during the real estate boom, it was about 2004, things were really moving in Idaho as well as Utah, all over
Right.
the country. Loans were, I mean, the loans that they had available at that time were much different than they are now. They called them liar loans. Basically, you would state whatever you wanted on the loan application, and the banks approved those loans. But it's still illegal to place your assets wrong on the loan application, even though
Right.
you'd have mortgage brokers that would tell you kind of how to do it, it's still illegal. For me, we bought a lot, started to build this home, and then I started to think about the time that I had this back surgery. So I had 4.5 years sober. I had a back surgery, we were building a home, and the real estate market's booming all at the same time. And when I relapsed, I started to think, I should get involved in real estate. I kind of have this grandiose thing going on when I use prescription drugs or any kind of drugs. It just changes the way I see the world. And so I ended up first buying lots and flipping them. And the illegal part is probably what you're more curious about.
Right, right. Yeah, I want to get there. So you knew when you had the surgery. Well, I guess I should ask, did you know when you had the surgery that if I start taking these painkillers, it's going to be a problem? Or were you just not realizing that you have this addictive personality?
I think I knew, um, but because my addiction had been more street drug in nature prior, like I'm living in a nice home, I'm working a normal job, I'm not on the street, and my life is very busy. when I injured my back, I had photo shoots and other things I had to do. So I go to the doctor, and the doctor's like, well, he prescribes the pills, but I didn't tell him.
Mm.
I'm addicted to drugs. Don't give those to me. Now that's something I do now. Like I went in and had surgery. I'm like, you'll have to find a way to give me something other than a narcotic because I can't take any of those. They change the way I think. But at that point, I didn't tell the doctor. And I thought I had it under control because I'm like, well, it's just, I'm taking them as prescribed, but it quickly got out of control.
Mm.
So
So you developed this addiction. How would you get the drugs? Just ask for refills?
yeah, it was super easy at that point.
Yeah.
My doctors just gave them to me, and then I had a surgery, so they gave me more. And then after the surgery, I would just call them and they would give them to me.
All right. So then you hit this stage where you need the new studio in your house, and walk me through what happened over the next few months and ultimately years to the crimes that you were charged with.
Sure. So we built a home in Highland. If you're familiar with Utah, it's a nicer area. And about the time that we built that home, they opened up a subdivision right behind our home. Like it was new lots that people could buy. I remember in the process of building this home, hearing that some of our neighbors were going to buy a lot back behind this where we lived and build a spec home. And I told my husband I wanted to do that. So I went and put two of those lots under contract. I think it cost me $2,500. And he pretty much flipped out. He told me, he's like, what are you doing? That's so risky. Why would you do this? And I said, well, I want to invest. I mean, I want to make some money doing this. I don't want to be left behind in this, what's going on. And so his concern, I went over and asked for the earnest money back. I said, we're probably not ready for this. They were happy to take it back. The lots doubled in value over the next few months, and
Mm.
I was pretty upset about that. I was like, I am
Right.
not listening to you anymore. I could have made all this money. And so then I started looking at other lots, and at first it was just let me buy a lot and flip it. Now my
Did
business
your
is,
husband have a good paying job?
yeah, he
Okay.
did. Mhm.
But not the resources enough to buy up all these lots in
Oh,
Highland.
no, no, no. I mean, he had a pretty good job. We just built this new home, and that was
Right.
very nice for us. And we, my thinking was I was working so hard as a photographer, like from sunup to sundown, that I
Right.
just didn't want to work as hard as I had been working. And my income was higher than my husband's income. So we were dependent on my income. I
Okay.
had never gotten child support. I came into the marriage with two kids that he adopted. To me, I felt this responsibility to keep going, so to speak. And
Right.
I thought, if I could make some money and maybe get our house paid off, it would really change the landscape. Like I wouldn't have to work as hard. And so I just kept thinking, well, I'll just invest. And like I say, I'd seen my parents do that. They'd really leveled up over the years buying real estate. And
Mm.
so it just all made sense for me. And it probably would have been fine if I would have just stayed in the buying a lot and flipping it. The first time I bought a lot and flipped it, I made $30,000, which is a lot of
Wow.
money.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I worked really hard taking wedding pictures to make $30,000,
Right.
you know.
And in what
So
period of time between the time you bought it to when you flipped it?
yeah, probably a month and a half.
So wow. So in 45 days, you're making 30 grand.
Right. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, you've got to understand like lots were going from 30 to 70,000 to 150,000. Like the market was just going crazy.
Right.
And so I just started putting a lot of time into looking for lots and flipping them. And
And if you
thus,
have an addictive personality, I would
yeah.
imagine that can be an addiction. Like,
Oh, it
especially,
totally is.
I mean, the money's coming in left and right.
Oh yeah. I am very much addicted to hustling. And it
Mm.
really goes hand in hand with my drug addiction, like because becomes grandiose the way my thinking is. Like it
Right.
starts out, let me buy a lot, but pretty soon what ended up happening was I put a whole subdivision of lots under contract in Heber. Yeah. A whole subdivision. Yeah. But I don't know enough. Like I'm moving fast. So I go put all this money down on these lots. And then I found out I have to close within 30 days. And if I don't, I'm going to lose all the money that I put down, which was over $100,000. So I'm going to lose all of our money. And so I hear that we'll go talk to a hard money lender. And so I'd start talking to people to see if they could come in and put the money down on it and help. And that's how I found out about equity deals, which is something that we'll probably dig into because that's what led to prison for me.
Right.
So, yeah, I'm
Which I
looking
don't
for
know anything about. So you're going to have to educate me. I don't know what an
oh,
equity deal is.
You know what's going to be hard is I have tried to explain this so many times. I'm going to do my best, but it is
Okay.
complicated. But
Okay.
ultimately, somebody introduced me to this concept of buying a house as an asset. So let's say that the house, it's silly to say that the house is worth 3 million, but you can buy it for 1.5 million because it doesn't make any sense, right? But people were building homes that were a certain square footage that would appraise high,
Hmm.
and then we would go to a bank and pull a bunch of cash out of it and basically use it as more of an asset, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And I can give you an example of how this was done.
Sure.
So if I had a builder that was building a home and he knew, let's say that it cost him $1 million to build it and he wanted to sell it for 1.5 million. Those are big stretches. He's probably lucky if he makes 80 to $100,000 on that. But just to keep the numbers simple. So he's in at 1 million, he's gonna sell it for 1.5 million. And I believe I can get it appraised for $3 million. Like that's
Mm.
how big these numbers were, right? So I
Right.
would say I will do a joint venture agreement with you and basically pay you what you're asking for. And everything over and above that is going to go back to whoever buys the home. And it was usually about $500,000 by the time we got to this point. Like the numbers were high. And I worked with mortgage brokers and appraisers, and the mortgage broker would send over this information to the bank and say, look, this is what our appraisal's for. What will you lend on it, before the person would even buy it? So we already knew that we could close the deal. So the bank was fully aware of the numbers too.
Right.
And then when the thing closed, cash would get kicked back to the person that bought the home. I bought a couple of those homes and got the cash back, and I used that money to invest like in these lots and other things and to help keep turning the deals that I had locked up. But ultimately, I became a broker, kind of like I wasn't licensed, but I was in the middle of a lot of these deals. So people would come to me and say, I want to buy one of these equity deals and get cash back. How can I do it? And I would put all them in touch with all the people. I would have some under contract. I would say the appraiser's here, here's the mortgage broker. And I ended up involved in a lot of those types of deals.
And
So,
is all of that legal?
well, I certainly didn't think it was illegal, but it turns out that it is.
It is
Um,
legal. Okay.
no, it is so at the time, there were billboards on the freeway saying, use your credit score to get cash back. Like
Right.
it
Right.
was a really strange time, right? Um, I heard I was under federal investigation. I'm going to say this. I could feel that the deals didn't make a lot of sense. Like when you're borrowing a lot of money from a bank and the house probably isn't worth as much as you're borrowing, you kind of know that it's not really the right type of things to be involved in.
But,
But I
but
got involved in it.
but also, are you thinking, well, the bank's in on it with me,
Absolutely.
and the builders are? I mean, all these other parties
Everybody's
are in on it.
complicit.
Right.
Everybody's complicit. So it's not nobody's being deceived, right?
Right.
There's complete transparency here. That didn't work when it came to the FBI. So
No. So you say you heard I'm envisioning hundreds of thousands of dollars
right,
coming and going,
correct.
and you're probably making a pretty good cut.
You would think so, but the way that it works out is that I go lock these houses up and not all of them close. So I lose money on some of them.
Okay, yeah.
A buyer doesn't get the credit, or the bank doesn't come through in time, and the interest, the hard money payments are too high. So I might lose 100,000 on this or make 100,000 on this. So I wasn't getting rich on it. In fact, when I went to an attorney and said, I hear that I'm under federal investigation, and I mapped it all out, he's like, you're taking all the risk. You're the person that's buying it's getting $500,000 back. You get 100,000. You're taking all the risk. Why are you doing this? And I was like, well, they have to make the payment. And he goes, yeah, but what if they just walk away? Then who
Mm,
cares? Like they got $500,000 and they use their credit and they just walk away. And you could potentially lose money every time one of these deals closes. It doesn't make any sense.
right.
Um, so he
How
was
did
right.
you hear you were under investigation?
So I was going to title companies, and one of the title companies told me that they couldn't close the deal with me. And I said, well, why? And at first they said, well, we heard that you're under federal investigation. And I said, what for? And they said, well, actually, we heard you're an alias of another woman named Portia. who's under federal investigation. I said, well, I'm not her alias. I didn't even know there was another Portia. It's kind of a unique name, right? But there was another individual. I need to get in touch with her. Her name's Portia Bunker, and she was lived in Park City, and she was closing real estate deals.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Same sort of
so
thing.
yeah, so it was kind of unfortunate that way. So that was one of the ways that I heard. I also made some realtors mad in town who came to me and said, "Hey, we want to list your properties." And I said, "I don't need you to. Like, I don't need you to list them. I'm an investor in the middle. I don't need to pay the commission." So then one particular realtor called the division of real estate, and then they reached out to me and I said, "But I'm not licensed." And so I went to my attorney again, and my attorney said, "They don't have any jurisdiction over you. Don't worry about it." But when they opened a mortgage fraud task force in Utah, I was at the top of the list of people to look into. And so there were just enough things pointing to me that when they decided to start investigating these and when everything kind of crashed, I was at the top of the list. And when they dug into it, there were so many things that they could find. Like one of them was the quantity of deals that my name was on, right? That just doesn't look good. It's if I would have done one or two of these, so many people walked away. But because my name was involved in lots of these deals, that became a problem.
Any idea how many number, what the number was?
Oh, I heard I was at least 60 houses. Like my name
Wow.
was, yeah, like this little mania that was going on. My hard work, my addiction to hustle, all of it was way too involved. So there were a lot of them,
And you
which
even went to meet with an attorney to be like, I'm under investigation. He has that conversation with you that you're taking all the risk. Then is
yeah.
it like the movies where the FBI show up at your house one day with guns and all
Well,
that? Or was it more, here's paperwork, come to the courthouse?
so the way that it went down was my husband and I met with the attorney, and I remember the attorney telling my husband, she's really not that important. And my husband goes, that doesn't comfort me. Like I need more than that, you know?
Yeah.
But what happened after that was the FBI did show up at our house. They did not come with their guns drawn. They just knocked on the door. And when we opened the door, they asked some questions. And I don't think they typically do that, but this is a paperwork case. They never came and raided our home or anything, but they did look at my husband and tell him, and because I had used his credit to buy and sell homes, and they
Mm.
said, look, if you stand by her, you could likely get wrapped up in a conspiracy on this. And
Wow.
yeah, that was pretty devastating for me to hear because, I had climbed my way out of some really hard things. And at that point, we had three kids together. He had adopted my two older kids, and he was not happy about everything that was going on. It was very much outside of like my husband's a pretty conservative guy, and he was confused by it. And
Right.
um, it
How old
was
were your kids at the time?
our youngest daughter when the FBI showed up was 3 months old. So I
Wow.
had, yeah, older kids. I had an 18-year-old, a 16-year-old, and then we had like a 4-year-old, uh, a 6-year-old, and a newborn.
So
So
they show up. Did they arrest you at that point, or is it just more, this
no.
is a warning, you're under investigation?
Yeah, I was kind of like, it was a warning, you're under investigation. And they also said, they told him, your wife will go to prison. And so it was scary. I remember calling the attorney back, and the attorney said, stay calm. Let's try to go in and meet with the prosecutor. Like, we'll figure out who the prosecutor is on the case. Obviously, there is a case now. It's not just hearsay. Let's see if we can go meet with the prosecutor. So the attorney sets up a meeting, and we walk in. And when we walked in, the Division of Real Estate, the state, the feds, the FBI, and it's like the room is packed. And my attorney says, hold on. And we walk back outside. I had a female attorney at that time, and she said, this doesn't look good. I need to have a conversation with them without you. I didn't like basically they had misjudged the situation and she thought I was less important. They apparently thought I was more
Right.
important. So she went in and she came back out and she said, let's go in, but let's proceed cautiously. And I think that mainly you just need to be apologetic and kind of hear what they have to say. And I said, sounds good. So we go in and sit down, and the FBI is kind of pounding on the table. Like one of the agents said, dang it, Portia, you have affected the whole Utah real estate market. This whole country is going in the can. And I was like all of a sudden, wait a minute, like I'm certainly not that important. And and they thought I was doing things I wasn't. Like they thought that I was using all of the investors as straw buyers and getting all the cash back. And I was trying to explain to them, no, the investors are buying the homes. I'm just making a cut. They're getting the cash back. And they weren't able to like really grasp that because they were also investigating another larger company
Hmm.
that has been indicted and is in prison that was doing that. Like they were using people's credit, straw buyers, and they were getting all the cash back, but that wasn't my model. And so they
Right.
just were, and they also thought I was connected to that organization. And I was like, no, I don't even know who they are. I've seen their billboards, but I don't know them. And it didn't go very well. So I ended up leaving the meeting, and my attorney said, I'll see if I can get you a 2-year deal. And I was like, we just went from you're not that important to 2 years. I mean, I went home so physically sick. I have a young baby. Financially, at this point, we're really not in good shape at all. Like we are pretty much on the trail to bankruptcy. And I'm trying to keep all these houses afloat that are crashing, and I'm paying attorney's fees. And we've pulled any retirement we had. We pretty much are in really bad shape.
Right.
And that drug on for a long time because we weren't really able to get anywhere with a
Trying to
deal.
kind of plea with them.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
and for me, partly is I just couldn't accept that they were gonna send me to prison. Like I couldn't see how I was gonna survive that. At that point I just thought, well, my husband will leave. How will I ever get through it? And so it continued on for a lot of years, and they were really rough years. And eventually, I planned to go to trial. They also indicted my husband on a conspiracy
Oh,
charge.
they did.
Yeah, they superseded in the indictment and charged him. So now I'm really thinking I have to go to the death, like, because if we both go to prison, like, who's going to take care of my kids? So I started trying to negotiate and said, look, I will take a deal if you will cut my husband loose. Like, he needs to take care of the kids. And they wouldn't do that at that point. And so we planned to go to trial. I'm crazy. And first of all, when I was charged, like a lot of those conversations happened before they actually indicted me. When
Right.
they actually indicted me, I had an attorney. They called the attorney and said, meet us at the courthouse. I went down, did my fingerprints, and walked out on pretrial release. I wasn't a flight risk and a danger to society. So I had been on pretrial release.
And what was the official charge?
Mortgage fraud, but it money laundering, mail fraud, wire fraud, and conspiracy.
And was
And
it one count or multiple counts?
multiple counts. It's
Multiple
multiple.
counts.
Yeah, there were like 4 or 5 houses, and then they charged several it kind of came down to there were misrepresentations on loan apps, but anytime um, the way that the feds use, like anytime money sent across state wires in the furtherance of a crime, it's automatically wire fraud, mail fraud, right? Like we sent an application, so now it becomes a fraud, and
Right.
they use those. That's how they indict it. So it was a 19 count indictment. I remember that.
19 counts.
19 counts total.
So
Yeah,
you get fingerprinted. They don't lock you up that day. They let you go. And is
right.
that when you start talking, let my husband free, I'll
Yes,
take the blame?
correct. Right.
And did that get anywhere?
No. No. And so I had an attorney who had been a federal prosecutor that was convinced I was innocent. He's like, you guys cannot prove guilt on her. She did not go into this thing planning, to commit a fraud, and everyone was complicit, right? The banks were aware, everyone was aware. And so I just really thought, well, maybe I won't, maybe I could win this. And if you're not willing to cut Chad loose, I will fight. I will go to trial. Like when it came right down to it, a few weeks before trial, my attorney's like, well, you know, probably they're going to end up getting your husband either way, because my husband had been done marketing for a bank prior. He had not been working in that field, but they said, I am not even college educated. So he's like, really, they're going to look at your husband and say he's the mastermind because, he's got the education. I said, but he wasn't involved at all. Like this was me. And so then I was like, that can't happen. It just got really sloppy. I mean, Chad had an attorney, I had an attorney, they're fighting back and forth. And this is kind of the lead up to we're planning to go to trial. And 3 weeks before trial, we're in the federal courthouse in Salt Lake City, Utah. And in the courtroom next to ours, the US Marshals shoot a guy on his first day at trial.
Oh my.
Yeah, very unusual.
Right.
Like, so this happens, and the marshals come running through our courtroom. The judge locks down the courtroom. I walked out somehow. Everything's locked down except me and the paramedics walk out with the guy that's been shot. And the news comes running up, and I end up doing an interview and telling them that the marshals just shot this guy for standing up with a pencil in his hand. So my husband comes out and he's like, "What are you doing talking to the news? We're going to trial in 3 weeks.
Right.
Let's go. You can't do this." And I'm like, "Well, they asked the question." He goes, "Let's go." So on our way home, my attorney calls and said, "Why would you do that? You have made everybody mad. Why would you do that?" And I said, "Well, they
Yeah.
asked the question." So
On
the
behalf
next,
of reporters, thank you for answering the question, by the way. But I get their point of view, but we want people like you to talk to us. So
I know. Well, it happened. So I did the interview on our way home. My attorney called and said they want to see you tomorrow morning in the courthouse again. Like they're not happy. No one's happy. I said, "I'm not happy. I don't care. We're all unhappy." She goes,
yeah,
"It doesn't work like that." So the next morning they revoked my pretrial release and sent me to the county jail.
because you did the interview.
Well, that no, they didn't say that's why. They had other,
Right. But do you
but
think that's why?
I do think that's why.
Wow.
And
So
so
they
they
send you to jail.
for a week, and I've not been to jail before, right? And I'm overwhelmed. I've just seen somebody get shot and die on their first day of trial. I'm going to go to trial. My husband, our kids, everything is in the balance. And I pretty much have a mental breakdown. Like while I'm in the jail, I'm just completely overwhelmed. I talked to my attorney. My attorney says the government has put in a motion to exclude any evidence that the banks were aware of what happened. That's my whole defense, right? So
Mm,
they basically have now got, and the judge agreed to it. So I am not allowed now to bring up the fact that the banks, because their whole case is the fact that the government or the banks are victims. I mean,
right.
that's the case. The banks, you have defrauded the bank. And I'm like, the bank didn't get defrauded. They were in on the conspiracy.
Right.
So now that's been taken from me. And when my husband picked me up, I couldn't even speak. I was so shook up. Everything just was, it was just too much for me. And I went to meet with my attorneys, and the attorney said she's not well enough to stand trial. And so my attorneys and the prosecutor went to the judge and said, "Let's do a mental evaluation." And they decided to put me back in jail and held me for 3 months and sent me to multiple different locations where I was finally found competent to stand trial. But by this time, I was so shook up and so confused. I just came home and I pled guilty. I pled guilty in those conditions.
Oh,
and
wow.
and they let me out. And then I was sentenced 6 months later. So there was a lot that happened leading up to the day that I would actually walk into that federal courthouse and be sentenced. And the day that I walked into the federal courthouse, I knew I had made everybody mad. I was facing 0 to 7 years. Before I walked in, I thought, well, I don't have a criminal history. As soon as I walked in, I knew the judge was going to max me out that day.
Wow. So you got the maximum. So up to that point, you had spent how long in jail that first time? 1 week?
1 week and then 3 months. Yeah,
1 week and then 3 months, and you plead guilty. And yeah, you would think sometimes if you plead guilty, they give you less time because it saves the trial. You
right,
go through all that, but they
right,
were all upset with you.
right.
Were you prepared to serve 7 years? That's a long time.
No, I wasn't prepared for any of it, but when I walked in and I could feel that that was what was going to happen. The thing that I knew at that point, my husband and I had been through so many hard things together, and we really were willing to stand by each other. I knew that. I was at that point, Chad hadn't pled yet. I pled, and the government had refused to basically let him off the hook. And so we asked them if they would release the felony so he could work because we knew I'm going to prison, right? I mean, I was sentenced that day to the 7 years. The judge gave me 8 weeks to say goodbye to my family. He was initially just going to have the marshals take me into custody, but I mean, Chad actually got up and pled with the judge. He said, "Please don't do that to her. Please give her time to say goodbye to our family." And I
Mm.
was sentenced to Dublin, California, and it's just outside of Oakland because they don't have federal prisons in Utah. So I got 8 weeks. And the next day, Chad and I had to go down to his attorney and say, I said, make a deal. He's pleading guilty. If they had agreed to this, that if the judge gave Chad prison time, that they would wait until I got home from prison to make him go to prison. So our kids wouldn't be without a parent. That was the one thing that they agreed to if he pled guilty, and we took it. Like that's the only thing we got. Now, what happened that was fortunate was the judge maxed me out. And a few months later, while I was in prison, they sentenced Chad and they gave him home confinement. So he didn't serve any
Oh,
prison.
good.
So he never did have to go to prison. But
And it all seems, I don't want to excuse it or minimize it because it doesn't, but it all seems to be one of those crimes that you don't really know you're committing a crime. And I know a lot of our viewers are going to say, of course she should know.
Yeah,
Anyone should know. And so I
right.
can see
And I
both
should have.
sides, but in a
Yeah,
way, you're not a violent criminal, roaming the streets. Sometimes we cover these crimes of horrible sex offenses or whatever, and the person's out in 3 months.
right. Yeah, that was hard. It was hard for my children because, by the time I went to prison, my kids were a little older. My youngest was 7 years old, and they sentenced me to her whole life in prison, like as long as she'd been alive. And she really didn't understand. It was really hard for my kids. They were frustrated because they're like, Mom, there's people that kill people that get, it was a long sentence. It was probably a little bit unfair. And I know I'm not the right person to say that. I think a more fair sentence would have been 5 years. Um, for when I got to prison and I saw maybe what other people were facing with similar crimes, it was pretty heavy.
Right.
Would have been less if I'd have pled early. And I did that to myself. So I have to understand, like
Oh, it
I
would have been less had you
it would
pleaded.
have. Oh
Okay.
yeah, I mean, if I'd have pled earlier, I probably could have got 2 or 3 years, and my husband wouldn't have been indicted. So like
Mm,
my fight in me that keeps going didn't serve me well in that case. Like I
right.
was against my own weaknesses, which is that I keep going, and
Were you
it
ordered to pay restitution?
yep, I
How
pay
much?
$11 million. Now, keep in mind, I never got $11 million at all, but they took the number from let's say that the home appraised for $3 million, and then when the whole market dropped, it was worth 6. I got that whole chunk. And even if somebody else got the cash back and I didn't, they hit me and my husband. So we both carry that debt on our
Still
back.
to this day.
Still always will till we die. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so it's pretty heavy, but I pay him 500, he pays him 500 a month. So it's 1,000 a month. We'll never pay it off. It's just a lifetime debt that we have. So,
Oh my
yeah.
gosh. So talk to me about when you walked into that prison for the first time.
It was so devastating and heartbreaking. I don't think anyone can comprehend unless they've experienced it. The days for me that were the most life-changing were the day that I was sentenced. The feeling of just your whole country's against you, like it's such a moment of unbelief. And the day that I walked in the prison. It is when the door shuts, you are completely cut off from the outside world. And you can't understand what that feels like until you experience it. The weight of a 7-year prison sentence. My husband dropped me off and then he was gone. And I walk into a very cinder block world. Everyone's wearing khaki. Nobody seems happy. And people say, "Were you scared?" And I say, "I was so brokenhearted. I would have had to climb a ladder to get to scared. I did not care what anyone did to me." Like the feeling of separation from my children and my community, I couldn't even imagine. I mean, I didn't have a cell phone for 5 years, and that's hard because you're used to it. But it's the connection to the people you love. You just can't fathom it. No, I didn't care about the food. I didn't care about the clothes. I didn't care if I slept on the floor. What I cared about was that connection to my children. And I really had to grieve that, that it didn't happen in a day. It took me a few days to even get off my bunk and go out and start to talk to people and try to navigate what prison was going to be like for me. Very, very painful.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can't imagine. What was it like? I mean, does it eventually become your it becomes your life, of course, but
It
do you
does.
accept it that it is your life? And how do you get through every single day?
It takes a long time to get to acceptance, and some people never do. For me, it was some divine intervention there, spiritual strength that gave me some purpose. I got to a place where I really started to see how fortunate I was. So that gratitude of, I have a husband who loves me, a community who supports me, family who loves me. I remember the first visit my family came out to see me. I hadn't seen my family for 4 months. Like that's a long time because I'm in another state and I left Chad in a really tough spot
Yeah.
financially. So our neighbors would chip in and try to help to let them come visit. And when they came out, I remember one of my coworkers in the prison. She's like, "Hey, listen, Louder. Like it's going to be really painful when they leave. You should know that. Like this is so exciting for you to see your family, but you're going to feel like yourself when they come, and when they leave, they'll take that with them, and it will hurt. Just come talk to me if you need to." I was not prepared. I had no idea how painful that could possibly be. I spent a few days, they'd come during the day and I just felt like myself again, and then the Sunday afternoon, they they do a buzzer and they're like inmates to the left, families to the right. And my husband and my daughter start to cry and my other kids, and I'm just like physically sick as I
Mm,
watch my family walk out. And then I wait in line for an hour to be strip searched and taken back to my bunk. And when I get to my bunk, I just curled up and sobbed. Like I couldn't even breathe. It hurt so deeply. Just so, and I thought, I don't know if I can ever see them again. Like the whole time I'm here, I don't know that I can go through this again.
right.
What amazed me was how supportive we were of each other. Like the women in prison, my roommate came in and wrapped her arms around me and she's like, I am so sorry you're hurting. She said, you should see how much they love you. I watched you guys with, you're their world. And it was like that from the gate. Like these women we really help each other out, which isn't the story you hear, right? Like everyone
Right.
makes it sound so hardcore, but um, I found purpose in service. I wrote curriculum and classes and taught classes. And I think it took me at least half my sentence to accept that I would have to serve all of it. Like I just
There was
couldn't.
no parole, no getting out early.
No, I served 5 years on seven. I got a program that gave me a year off and I got good time. But when you walk in and you can't even imagine doing a week, I had to, I could not believe that I would have to serve even 5 years. Like I remember my first Christmas, my roommate's like, we made it through our first Christmas. And I said, yeah, four more to go, five more to go. It just is too overwhelming to imagine how you can keep going. And so, what helped me the most was halfway through my sentence, I took complete ownership of the fact that it wasn't my judge, it wasn't the FBI. This was 100% my choice. I put myself here. And then that really freed me up. Like I quit feeling like a victim and started feeling really empowered and started looking forward to a future. That was the key for me.
Yeah,
So,
but still, I mean, 5 years, 5 of 7. That's a long time. And were you there during COVID?
no, I got out right before COVID.
Okay.
Really grateful for that because yeah, I love to be outside. It helped. I mean, that was really healing for me. And so being locked down all the time would have sucked for sure.
I've talked to other inmates over the years who say who are released, who say when it comes time to go, they actually have mixed feelings. They're so excited to get out, but in a way they're sad. And a lot of them have a hard time describing that about why
Oh
would you
yeah.
be sad about leaving? Did you have any of those mixed emotions?
Yeah, my heart was so full. I had done the work and really connected with these women. So by the time they called my name, now I was transferred from California to Minnesota. I did 3 years in Minnesota and then I was transferred back I was actually in a higher security prison through most of my prison sentence. And then I was sent to a camp at the end. And when I walked out of that camp, I had this box of, letters these women had all written me, and my heart was so full because I just had who I had become while I was there and the connections that we shared. And the women all came out and were cheering for me. And I was very excited for my life, but I felt like I was leaving a piece of me in prison. Like who I had become while I was there was someone different. And I really liked myself at that point. And it has driven me. I've been home for over 5 years now, and I've been back to prisons in Idaho, prisons in Utah, county jails and detention centers. I've written 2 books that I send into prisons for free all the time. And it's driven me. That love and that connection that I shared with the people that I met in prison has driven me to a whole different purpose in my life. So,
I bet. And that's incredible to actually take it and do something more with it, not just walk out and be like, okay, that's done, moving forward.
yeah.
What was that like your first night home? Do you remember?
My goodness. Well, I remember when Chad picked me up, I was so nervous and overwhelmed and excited just to hold his hand. I mean, I just was, he goes, where do you want to eat? What do you want to do? And I couldn't make a decision because every decision's made for you. I said, just go to McDonald's because I couldn't think of anything. I was too
Right.
scared.
Did you go to
Uh,
McDonald's?
yeah. I've talked to so many people that said the same thing when they leave prison. Their first meal was McDonald's.
McDonald's. Mm.
Yeah. So that's where we went.
Probably
But
the best McDonald's you've ever had in your
yeah,
life.
it was. It was. It was
Yeah.
just everything was so overwhelming. It took
Right.
me a while to adjust. It's hard to adjust to prison. It's hard to adjust to come home. Um, what I did was, so I had to come to a halfway house. So, and I didn't have to, but they gave me a few months early. They let me out a few months early if I would, and that gave me the opportunity to come back to Utah and be
Mm.
closer to my family. What I didn't like about it is I much prefer prison over the halfway house. It's just way easier to do prison time. But I
Hmm.
was closer to my family and I could start to visit them. I remember getting to the
Explain to
house.
people what a halfway house is.
It's a transitional home where they have you go and kind of get acclimated before you just go straight home. So
Okay.
you can go there, you get a pass to get a job, you live with other people similar to in prison, but the conditions are better in prison.
Mhm.
So that made it difficult. I do remember when I finally was released from the halfway house and so Chad would come up and visit, the kids would come visit, but when I finally got my first night home, it was so eerie and strange. It was so quiet. I mean, I just kept tippy-toeing. I thought they can hear everything I do because I'm so used to the noise in prison and living in bunks with a bunch of other people. And so, and in prison, they count you every few hours. So officers are walking through with keys and flashlights, and you just
Yeah.
adjust to all the noise. But I remember feeling uncomfortable. And the hard part for me was I didn't know my kids. Like they were 5 years older. I had to re-get to know them. They had changed. I had changed. I couldn't expect them to be who they were. I kind of had to grieve that time and just accept that I had lost that. And so we had to get to know each other again. And they were hurt. You know, it took time, especially with my teenage daughter, because that was really hard on her. Those years were really hard. And so to navigate that and allow her to share how I hurt her and just keep showing up for her,
Right.
that's taken time.
Were
So,
you open with people? I know you are now, obviously, and
yeah,
thanks for doing this interview. But I mean, were you open in the beginning with people like, "Yep, I served time. I'm a felon. I went to federal
right away.
prison." You were.
Yep. I was right away because to me, I'm like the day I was sentenced and I was on the news, like it was on the, so I thought, who cares? Like it was kind of freedom to me. I don't care what anybody thinks. I'm a member of the LDS Church, and when I came home, I got up and bore my testimony and thanked my whole community. I thanked our ward congregation for helping support my kids while I was gone. And everybody's like, she's talking about it. And I thought, yeah, well, you can be uncomfortable, but I'm going to be comfortable. Like I'm
Yeah.
comfortable in my own skin. So, and they've been supportive of that,
Right. And in a way, I think that's a great lesson for everybody to just be open about it, because then your willingness to discuss it, I think, helps other people to be like, oh, she's cool if I ask her a question or we
Yeah.
can talk about it.
I did that. And the other thing was like, it changed my life for the better. Why would I come home and pretend something that changed my life for the better didn't happen? Like, you could go to college and do 4 years, or you're going to pretend you didn't go. Like, I went to prison and my whole life changed. It was probably the most important thing. I worked so hard to change my life. I'm not going to come home and pretend that didn't happen. It was just the way I felt. I felt very liberated. I owned it. I accepted. I did the time. I did what they asked. And, the world has cheered me on and been so I get crazy comments occasionally, but I felt like I had nothing to be ashamed of. What I was ashamed of was that I made those choices. But going to prison was just the consequence of them. Like when people say, aren't you, I would die before I would talk about going to prison. I'm like, really? Because I mean, that's just the consequence. Of course, I regret the choices that I made that led to prison. And I'm sorry that I hurt my family, but that was the price they asked me to pay. And I'm proud that I did it as well as I did.
Do you keep in touch with any of the other women that you were in
Oh
prison
yeah.
with?
Like one of my very best friend, my best friend on the planet, I met in prison and she and
Cool.
I talk all the time. Yeah, she's
She's
amazing.
out.
Yeah, and doing
Yeah.
so well. Like just so well. I love her so much. So
I
yeah,
bet I bet you learned a lot about judging others.
oh yeah. Yeah, and now I'm a mental health coach and I get to work with youth that are struggling and other people. I have written the goal every day since I got to prison that I live without judgment. And I feel that I've really done a pretty good job of that. And by not judging others, I don't judge myself. I just look at the situation and say, okay, what can we learn from this? Like you're struggling in this area. Let's get informed about it and talk about it because removing the judgment makes it so much easier to heal. And so I think that I am a lot less judgmental. I work with the homeless in our community, and I just see them as amazing people. They're my friends. So yeah.
What a lesson. Tell me about your books. Can people buy them?
Yeah, they're on Amazon and Audible. Easy to find. I'm the only Portia Louder out there. My mom, my mom gave me the right name.
Good.
People don't forget. They're easy to find. So yeah.
Okay, and I see the cover of one behind you. What's the name of that one?
Oh, that's Living Louder. And that's the one that they should buy first. Like it's available in prisons across the country. It is the story of my prison journey and the people that I met. And when I got home, I was working in drug treatment, and at night I was working grave shifts, and I started writing this book because I loved the women so much. And then I sent it in and they were like, this is our story. It was
Oh,
so cool. And
nice.
then the second book is Born to be Brave. And it's a lot of the people that I've met since I've got home. There's more men's prison stories and stuff. So yeah, that's it.
Portia, thank you very much. What an inspiration. I know that you have to go, but I have a feeling that many of our viewers might have questions for you. So if we get a bunch of questions, would you mind coming back in the next few weeks and answering them?
Sure. Yep, I'd be happy to do that.
Awesome. What would you be your parting words, your final message for our viewers about your whole experience?
I want your viewers to know that whatever they're going through, whatever difficult thing they're going through, you can't imagine the beauty on the other side of it. Because there is no way when I was a young single mother or when I was in the thick of this that I could see past and see the beauty on the other side. But when I got to a place where I realized that getting through that hard experience might be the most important thing I ever do, and that I got to decide the ending, my whole life changed. And that's available to anyone, whatever they're going through, whether it's your kids that you're struggling with, or yourself, or a divorce, or an illness. Know that how you respond to what you're going through can change everything. And an amazing ending means you get to write the story. And so I would tell people that in prison, man, you guys have amazing stories, but if you don't have an amazing ending, it'll be a tragedy. And I really grasp that. And so, yeah, just believe in the amazing ending, focus on what you want the ending to look like, and do the work in the middle, and you will have so much beauty on the other side of the pain.
Such a great message to end on. What a powerful story. I could have talked with her another hour, and she's willing to come back. So if you have questions that you want Portia to answer, as I mentioned earlier, email questions at eastidahonews.com, and we will have her back on and she can answer your questions. My thanks to her for sharing her story, and you can, of course, go check out her books. My thanks also to newspapers.com. I did a quick search this afternoon for Portia's name, and look what came up. She's actually been on there a few times. Like, here is when the photography business, and here is when she spoke at a mental health conference. Newspapers.com is our sponsor for Courtroom Insider, where we appreciate their support. You can go on, give them a try for 7 days, search up any true crime story you want, and see what's on there. And you will go down a gazillion different rabbit holes because there's so many cool things on newspapers.com. And again, our thanks to them for sponsoring Courtroom Insider. I don't have any shout outs or questions tonight. My apologies. Running a little tight on time to get this out to you. But again, if you have questions, you have shout outs, anything you want to ask, send it to questions at eastidahonews.com. Here's where you can find me. I'm on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, of course. Go ahead, and if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. That helps us build and reach new people and helps us continue to do Courtroom Insiders. I'm also on X. You can follow me on all of those places. And don't forget, tomorrow night, we're looking at the Shastagroni case. And then on Thursday night, we're talking with Brad Bradley, brother of Amy Bradley. And yes, his name is Brad Bradley. And she is the subject of the Netflix docuseries, which is just crazy. Amy Bradley is missing. He will be here. If you have questions ahead of time that you want me to ask, you can use that same email. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you have a great Wednesday. We'll be back here tomorrow night, 7 o'clock Mountain Time, for another edition of Courtroom Insider. Take care.